The whole business has changed since your day, hasn't it, in a way? You would never have dreamed of going to the BBC and saying, I haven't got any talent, I don't have an act, I don't have a show, but will you give me a job? I mean, people really do that now, don't they?
I know they don't. They go along and are bravely auditioned, and they don't seem to realise that half the time, too, the sadness is that half the time the acts that you see who are most tragically pathetic are being used for that reason. They're not really showing always the best of the crop. They're showing a few of the best and then one terrible person to be laughed at, really, which is really not fair. You know what I mean? It's their selection that they're showing you. So, but it is a day of instant celebrity, as you say, people who do nothing and have no skill being quite well known, really. Not for long, though. It doesn't last very long.
Is that the key then to lasting, that you have to have a talent and you have to have something that you've worked hard to do and trained at and become good at?
Yes, you have to, that's right, and have a lot of variety, little corners to turn and little tricks to twist things round to make them look different, so that they're a little bit refreshed every now and again, not treading the same furrow all your life.
What about your parents? How proud were they when you got on the Frost Report and you got these first professional gigs that led on to the greatness that you've achieved since?
Well, I'm pleased to say my mum and my dad were still alive, which is a terrific bonus. I mean, when I opened at the Palladium on my own, because of course the other thing about Ron and I, we did a lot of things separately and a lot together, but Ron was not interested in doing say a pantomime at the Palladium. To be honest, at that stage, I don't think I was interested in playing the Ugly Sisters with Ron, because we didn't want to. We wanted to have half of our year separate and half of our year together. And then I played Buttons at the Palladium, and with Clodagh Rogers, Julian Orchard, Terry Scott, David Kossoff. A lot of them are gone now. Clodagh still with us and doing well. My mum and dad came to the first night, so they saw it. And that's always rather nice, isn't it, when you're done, and they saw the first decent house we bought and everything, so he knew I was all right before he went, I think, really.
And that must be a great thrill for you, knowing that he knew that.
Yes, that's right, it was lovely.
What about the Palladium? I mean, is there any greater thrill in terms of a place to perform?
No, I don't. I think the Palladium, of course, has a very special place in my life, and most performers' lives, I suppose, in vaudeville people, because when we were starting off, I mean, you could always show your card and get a free ticket for a matinee at the Palladium. In the terrific days when Val Parnell ran the Palladium and the American top of the bills came, the Hopes, the Bennies, the Danny Kays, the Martin Lewises, the Mickey Rooneys, the Jackie Gleasons, and one saw them all. And you see, even those days when Bob Hope came up and Benny, they had a variety show in the first half, and Danny Kaye as well, and the second half they would do an hour, but they'd have people from their company pop on. Phil Harris would come on and chat to Bob Hope, and they'd do little shticks, but nobody was on forever, I mean, in the best days of Variety, when Variety bills were touring the Moss Empires, the Max Millers and the Max Walls, that type of top of the bill, would only do 22 minutes. The first spot comic, 7 minutes, that did. And if you went to 9, there was a knock on your door saying, take these 2 minutes out. 7 minutes, you paid for it, 7 minutes, what we want. Because they were doing twice nightly, and it had to run to time, you see. So Max Miller would do 22 minutes twice nightly, and that's not as bad as doing an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours Ken Dodd has done since, you know what I mean? But the Palladium was... When I saw, Bob Hope, who was, of course, this fantastic giant of a jokesmith and big film star, when I went to see him at the Palladium, and the music plays, dee, 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 and going for dee, 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 dee. Still no Bob Hope. Da 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 dee 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 dee. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Bob Hope. Dee dee, and the miles of music, the confidence he walked on with, and I thought, my God, it's just, is he real? It was because he'd been a huge film star, to me. And they were great days, really. Wolf Phillips Band, Palladium, terrific.
Who have you worked with who's impressed you the most?
Let me see. Well, I met Bob Hope. That was fairly exciting. David Frost was going to interview Bob Hope in the period when he was doing Frost on Friday, Frost on Saturday, Frost on Sunday. And I rang up David and I said, I'd like to be in the audience when you interview Bob Hope. And, I'll get a ticket for him. And it was done at Wembley. And I was walking along the corridor. I'd come out of the gents, actually, in the corridor at Wembley. I walked along the corridor. Who can come out the riverfront with Bob Hope? He said, my God, your name is, he said, I watched you last night on the television doing a cute little bit. This was no, that's me over here with Bing, he said, in Tom Jones' dressing room. I thought, that's not a bad trio to be watching. And he said, how old are you? I said, I'm 27 or 28. Well, very good, Ronnie. Nice to meet you. And then I went and sat in the audience, and he did all Mickey Rooney jokes about Ronnie Corbett because he'd seen a little gap talking about a short comic, and that was pretty impressive. Who have I? And then he introduced me subsequently at a charity thing in Grosvenor House. Who I met Crosby as well, and. Dalmahoy in Edinburgh when he turned up for a golf tournament. Who would be they're pretty impressive. Can't help but being impressed by these sort of presences,
The Alex Belfield In Conversation podcast.
My special guest today is the author of a brand new book called It's Good Night from Him, and the book is the story of the two Ronnies. Ronnie Corbett joins us today for an exclusive hour-long programme. We were talking before about your time at the Palladium and the people you get to meet. Presumably that is one of the big bonuses of being in show business, that you get to meet your heroes.
Yes, and of course Hope had been a hero like Danny Kaye, but Hope I had watched throughout my childhood, and I mean not only a jokesmith but an attractive, charming persona he exuded, and a lovely dancer. He sang beautifully, in the way that Fred Astaire and Tormé, these sort of people using a song, and Hope would sing. And when I've got on tape on DVD at home, I watch it maybe within a month ago, Jimmy Cagney and Bob Hope, Seven Little Boys, doing a tap dance on the table. Well, unbelievably good. I mean, Cagney was a fabulous tap dancer with the peculiar stiff-legged action he had. And I watched them, and I can watch it over and over again. Hope is good, but not quite the little élan that Cagney has as a dancer. So they were great times.
I don't know whether you agree. It seems to me that Bob Monkhouse was Bob Hope's nearest comparison in terms of his class on stage and his material that he used.
Yes, and Bob was a great wordsmith. I mean, fantastic. Yes, he was really, with Doddy about new material and learning and of course he was a very clever writer as well. He could write a lot of his own, which is a very brave thing to do. I mean, it's hard enough to pick, if somebody sends you 4 pages, to pick the best 10 jokes from 4 pages. It's hard enough to back your judgment without having to write the stuff and back your own judgment. That is really hard, But Bob Monkhouse was a very accomplished, very, very accomplished. What a amount of work he did, that's right.
I was a huge fan, but the one thing that they said about Bob after he died was that he wasn't loved in the same way that probably you are or Doddy is, because he almost was too slick.
Yes, he was. It was an unfair criticism, but it was certainly levelled at him. There was something people thought chilling about him. I think it was... He probably let the expertise show a little too much. He couldn't help... He wasn't showing off, but the great thing is to be expert and then just slightly cover it up a bit, or I mean, it is odd, but Bob Hope was... I mean, Bob Hope had quite... I mean, he went through a funny period over here. I remember when he did Miss World at the Albert Hall and people threw flour at him because of his America and Vietnam and that time of his life. And he was a tough customer. I mean, there's no doubt about that within himself, but he was very, very good at covering. Bob it was always a bit unfair about Bob, because he was a very sweet man personally and everything, but I think he felt he had been unfairly tarred by that brush as well.
Nobody likes a very attractive comedian, do they?
No, or, of course, when we were growing up, nobody liked young comedians. I mean, I had this peculiar... Because I must have sat and planned my life. I sort of did plan my life in a way. Sometimes I think I'm living the dream I planned. But I did see in my mind that if nothing had happened to me by the age of 37, peculiar age to think of, but I thought 37, I would go and do something else in the business. Because in our day, anybody under 37 was in the 30s quite easily seen to be cocky, and you're too young to start telling me jokes or being flash in front of me. It was an unattractive thing. But in those days, of course, the young comics were appealing to family audiences, so it was easy to be cocky in front of granddads and mums and uncles. Nowadays, the young comics appear in front of young people, so they can be as cocky as they like because they're all the same age. You know what I mean? You go and see Ross Noble's audience, they're all, or Ed Byrne, they're all a young audience. You don't see many uncles and aunts in there and things so much as you would see at Donny's.